Okay, let's unpack this. When you think information revolution, your brain just jumps straight to visual stuff, right?
Absolutely.
You know, Gutenberg, the printing press, the whole idea of ink on paper, text organizing the world.
The permanence of it.
Exactly. But what if that wasn't, what if that wasn't the only way it could have gone? What if the data age started not with ink, but with sound?
And that's the really cool idea we're digging into in this deep dive. We're sort of stepping into this historical crossroads. It's a beautiful piece of alternative history.
Like a what-if scenario.
Precisely. You could call it a Uchronia. We're exploring what might have happened if, around 1450, Johannes Gutenberg didn't go all in on the printing press.
He pivoted.
He pivoted hard to building this continent-wide acoustic data system. We're calling it the Gothic Data Network, or, for short, the Sound Internet.
The sound internet. I love that. So our mission today is to figure out how this thing actually worked. The hardware, the software, how it was so fast, so secure, all without a single wire.
Right. We need to get our heads around the sheer scale and ingenuity of it.
So let's start with the architecture. The physical stuff, you can't lay fiber optic cables, so what did you use?
You used what was already there, these enormous, colossal structures. And the sources really lay out the roles of two main building types across Europe.
Okay, so if we're thinking of it like a modern data system, what are the components? What's the server? What's the transmitter?
Well, the data servers, your localized storage units, were the monasteries.
Okay, that makes sense.
They held all the sensitive information, the liturgical code books, the protocols, the decryption keys, really. They were the secure database.
And towering over everything else, you had the great cathedrals.
Those were your broadband towers, your signal actuators. They weren't just religious symbols in this timeline. They were the absolute core of the communications infrastructure.
So let's talk about the hardware in those towers. We're talking about bells.
We are, but we have to think of them as serious pieces of engineering. High-power curved plate resonators. These things were designed for one thing: penetrating reach.
How powerful are we talking?
The goal was a consistent sound volume of somewhere between 110 and 120 decibels.
Wait, 120 decibels? That's staggering. You have to get your head around that. In a world with no cars, no industrial noise.
Right. It's louder than a jet taking off. It would have completely dominated the acoustic landscape.
So the goal was just raw power to push that signal for miles.
Miles. Through rain, wind, whatever. And to get that kind of power and reliability, the construction was critical. The sources specify this incredibly precise metallurgy.
An alloy of some kind.
A very specific one, a mix of 80% copper and 20% tin.
Why that ratio? Why so specific?
It's all about balancing two things: resonance and longevity. If you have too much copper, the sound is just dull. It dies too quickly. Too much tin, and the bell becomes brittle.
Ah, so it'd crack.
It would crack under the stress of being hit that hard over and over. These singing towers, as they're called, had to transmit data reliably for decades.
Yeah.
So that 80-20 mix, it wasn't a choice. It was a systemic necessity.
It really changes how you think about medieval craftsmanship, doesn't it? It's less about art and more about pure technological mastery.
It absolutely is.
Okay, so you have this incredible hardware, this blast of 120 decibels that can travel for miles, but that's just noise, right?
Yeah.
How do you turn a loud sound wave into, actual discrete data?
Right, and that gets us to the system software, the encoding protocol. And this is where it gets really fascinating.
The logic behind it all.
The logic. We have to completely forget about music. No harmony, no melody. This system was based on pure mathematics, the study of permutations.
Permutations, so it's not about what notes are played, but the order they're played in.
Precisely. The unique order. Imagine a standard set of 7 bells in a tower. The number of unique sequences or rows you can ring before you have to repeat a pattern
is the factorial of 7, which is 5,040. Wow, so that's your vocabulary size.
5,040 unique, non-repeating data packets, just from 7 bells. Each one of those sequences, say 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, was a unique identifier.
And that identifier pointed to something in the code book.
It corresponded directly to a specific word or command or a standardized phrase stored back in the liturgical code book at the monastery, your data server.
That's an enormous vocabulary for the 15th century. You could send incredibly complex messages with that, not just attack or fire.
You could, but it required an insane amount of human skill. The operator, the ringer, they were basically the modem.
Right.
They weren't just pulling ropes. They were reciting with their hands a highly complex sequence, a 7-digit password, basically. And they had to do it perfectly, under pressure. The integrity of the whole data packet rested on their precision.
One wrong pull and the whole message is corrupted.
The whole row is corrupted. And think about the training for that. Nailing 5,040 potential permutations perfectly. These operators were trained like, I don't know, high-speed cryptographers.
It must have been state-sponsored. Or monastic.
Almost certainly. Total focus on auditory memory, physical timing. They were dedicated network engineers, and the sources suggest they had to maintain a rhythm of a new sequence every 2 or 3 seconds to keep the data flowing.
That kind of intensity tells you this was for critical information, not just church calls. Okay, so how do you get that signal from one tower across an entire continent? That's the next step, right? Routing.
The solution was actually really elegant, and it was based entirely on physics. They called it the line of hearing.
The line of hearing. So you just built towers close enough to hear each other.
That's the physical relay logic. They mapped the entire continental landscape based on sound range. Cathedrals, fortified towers, they were all positioned as relay stations, typically 5 to 20 miles apart.
Well within the range of those 120 decibel bells.
All within the guaranteed range.
Okay, so let's trace a packet of data. The sender rings a complex sequence.
That pattern travels at the speed of sound. An operator at the next tower, maybe 18 miles away, is listening, actively listening. They have to instantly, auditorially confirm the exact sequence.
And then immediately retransmit it.
Immediately, without delay. Bring the exact same sequence to send it to the next node down the chain. The human brain is the signal booster.
The human element is what makes it so fast.
And that's what gave it this revolutionary speed. The sources say a single data packet could cross 15 stations. That could be 200, maybe 300 miles in just 9 minutes.
9 minutes, that just shrinks the world. For the 15th century, that's almost instantaneous.
It completely changes governance. News of a military victory, a critical threat, it could cross an entire country, like France, in less than an hour.
Before this, that's a 3, 4, maybe 5-day journey by horse courier.
Exactly. So this network created a kind of centralized power that just didn't exist before. Real-time response. It would have changed everything. Taxation, defense, commerce.
It created a synchronized community, not defined by borders, but by who could hear the bells.
By shared acoustic reach. Everyone on the same clock.
But speed is one thing. What about reliability? You have humans listening over long distances. There has to be noise, errors. How do they handle error correction?
Yeah, that's a great question about system integrity. They had a remarkably effective protocol, a kind of immediate feedback loop.
So how did the receiving station say, hey, I didn't get that right?
They didn't. The feedback came from the sender of the corrupted message.
The previous operator in the chain.
Right. So say an operator messes up the sequence. The previous operator, who's still listening, recognizes the mistake instantly, and they issue a very specific error signal.
And what did that sound like?
It wasn't subtle. It was designed to cut through everything. It was a dissonant, unmistakable clapper strike. They just called it a clash.
A clash, like an alarm.
A jarring, horrible noise. The acoustic equivalent of static or a dropped call. And it was a clear command. Stop. The data you just heard is corrupt. Retransmit the last row immediately.
That's brilliant. Instant feedback for rapid error fixing. Okay, so the data is fast and it's reliable. But if it's carrying military secrets, what about security? How do you stop your enemies from just listening in?
Cybersecurity. And for that, they turned to one of the great minds of the Renaissance, Leon Battista Alberti. They used what the sources call the Alberti protocol.
Based on his cipher disks.
His polyalphabetic cipher disks, yes. But applied to sound. The real complexity came from dynamic encryption.
What does that mean?
Well, each of the 7 bells has a pitch, and you could map each pitch to a letter or a concept. The cipher disk allowed the senders to change that pitch to meaning map based on a pre-shared key.
So wait, the meaning of the sound could actually shift during the transmission.
That's the beauty of it. The sender could shift the key mid-transmission, so the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 might mean ATTCK for the first row. But after the key shifts, that exact same sequence of sounds could mean REFUGE.
Which would make the peals completely indecipherable to anyone without the key. They'd just hear perfect bell sequences. But the information would be nonsense. The alphabet keeps changing under their feet.
It's a layer of security that's honestly comparable to modern techniques. You needed a code book from the monastery, you needed the key for the day, and you had to track the shifts in the cipher. Otherwise, it was just noise.
So we've got the whole system, the high-power hardware, the mathematical software, the incredible speed of the relay, and advanced Alberti encryption for security. It's a complete vision of an alternate 15th century.
And if you put it all together, the Gothic data network didn't just move information. It integrated medieval Europe in a way that, say, the early printing press never could, at least not in terms of real-time speed. It turned these vast, separate territories into one responsive, synchronized community.
All defined by this shared acoustic rhythm. It really makes you wonder how differently civilization might have developed if this auditory focus had stuck around. It's just a reminder that technology isn't always about what's newest. It's about using what you have in the most brilliant way possible.
It certainly makes you appreciate the ingenuity that was around long before electricity.
Absolutely. So here's a final thought for you to mull over as you're listening to the sounds of your own world. That deep ringing of a cathedral bell, what they called the living voice of the tower, it once carried secrets and commerce and strategy. If this auditory approach was so fast, so reliable, so secure, what might our modern world look like if we had never abandoned the elegance of auditory data? What forgotten advantages might still be hiding in those ringing rhythms?